Disneyland's revamped Snow White theme park ride has sparked controversy because it has changed its ending to show a sleeping Snow White receiving true love's kiss from her handsome prince.
Now, the ride has been met with backlash for showing the prince kissing Snow White without her consent, with critics saying the depiction of the kiss in the film teaches kids old-fashioned ideas about what a man is allowed to do to a woman. So should Disney rethink showing sleeping princesses being kissed unaware? Joining us now is dating historian Nikki Hodgson, who says we should update the story's ending to reflect modern society, and relationship therapist Emiliana Silvestri, who says it is ridiculous to suggest Disney has a moral duty.
OK, let's start with you, Nikki. Really? I mean, you know, are we also going to update it so it doesn't have all of those animals able to do sort of superhuman things? Are we also going to update it so we don't send the message that you should give poisoned apples to people that you don't like? I mean, you know, this is Disney. It's not real life.
No, it's not real life, but it's really important to note that the original story from 1812 didn't feature a kiss at the end at all. So Disney invented the kiss in 1937 when the film came out. This film is nearly 80 years old now. You know, it was brought about in the Depression. It was meant to cheer people up, but it was also brought about at a time when women didn't have the same kind of rights to push men back, and when we didn't treat children with such reverence. So, you know, what's really important is that we talk now to kids about consent, about them having a body bubble, about them knowing that people can't come into their space. And this scene goes against all of that.
Emiliana, I mean, as children, we do develop values very early on as children by the things that we watch, and whether it's fiction or not fiction, we don't sort of... If you're very young, maybe you don't decipher between the two at that age, but it sort of becomes ingrained in you. So doesn't Disney have a level of responsibility to be more contemporary and address the values that we adopt now in 2021?
No, I disagree. I think Disney's a form of entertainment, and I think it's my job as a parent to teach my daughter the issues of consent. I don't think it's Disney, which is an entertainment forum, you know, should be responsible for teaching children issues that are coming up now. I think it's great that we're opening this conversation of consent, and whatever does that, I think, is a positive thing. But people blaming Disney and a romantic kiss at the end of a movie in a fantasy tale isn't what's responsible for why teenagers and people older have become confused about consent and issues as such. Disney's not responsible for it, and I think for them to come under attack is really unfair. And I think it's a parent's responsibility to teach my 6-year-old, if she's watching that, the difference between consent and the difference between reality.
Can I clarify, though? In real life, are you saying what Prince Charming did was OK? Is that OK? In real life?
I'm saying it's a fairy tale. It's not a real situation.
Yeah, but if it was in real life, would that be OK?
Well, the story's a little odd as it is, because he's kissing her because she wouldn't wake up if she wasn't kissed. So in real life, if that was the case, you'd want that person to be kissed because you'd want them to wake up. So the story's not reality, and that's what I would explain to a child who's watching it. I think you're seriously underestimating the intelligence of children if you think that will become a confusion to them later on in life about consent. I think that's really underestimating what children are capable of and what they understand by nature. Also, people who, I mean, I work as a therapist and I've worked with people on both sides, those victims and those who have been accused of harassment, and people who don't understand consent and boundaries aren't doing that because they watched a Disney film when they were younger that's confused them. It's much more complex than that, why people are going into, you know, situations that they don't understand and crossing boundaries. It's nothing to do with Disney. I've never sat in an office and thought, oh, if he hadn't have watched Snow White, he'd be behaving himself.
Yeah, I mean, Nikki, that's a really important point, isn't it? That there are issues around consent, and it's very important that young people and teenagers discuss them. But perhaps Disney fairy tales are, you know, not our educators here. You know, there are all sorts of things that happen in Disney fairy tales that, you know, are not real life. And actually, if you start using these fairy tales and these stories and these lovely films that we all adore watching with our children, if you start introducing really kind of unpleasant issues into them, it sort of spoils the experience without actually gaining any benefit.
Well, I think it's really interesting that Emiliana is obviously a very diligent and great parent, because she's just said herself that she sits down with her children and would explain something that happened in a film. But many parents don't know what their children are watching and are not paying attention to that. So that's one of the things that concerns me. And just in terms of consent, I beg your pardon?
That's not Disney's fault that parents are, that's parents' fault, then we should go to the parents.
I'm not saying it's Disney's fault, but Disney, of course, Disney can choose to have a moral duty or not. It's up to them. They can be an ethical business if they want to be. They make so many millions of billions of pounds every year from their films. And children watch them very young, and they are some of the first stories that they imbibe.
I hear you, and I watched them, and I was never confused about consent. I watched all the Disney films as a child, so does my child, and neither of us are confused about consent. I think it's the responsibility of the parent. I think it's brilliant, and respect you for bringing this up as a conversation, and it's important, but it's not Disney where we should be looking to that's the cause of this problem. You're absolutely right. It's parents. Education could do with changing it. And Disney have evolved through criticism, and they have changed the characters, and Tangled and Moana and Frozen, and there is a lot of, they've changed and they've evolved. This is a very historical story that I don't think they should have to change history because of this consent issue that I don't believe has caused any issues.
Nikki, it's not sorry, let me just, I just want to ask, it's not even that it's a historical story. I mean, it's just not. It was never true. You know, all of the things that happen in this story, we have suspended our disbelief about, haven't we?
The story itself didn't end with a kiss. Disney invented that kiss, so they do have responsibility for changing the plot line. The original 1812 Grimm story does not end with a kiss. Instead, the dwarves carry the coffin.
No, it didn't. But that original story had that man at 32 and the child and that Snow White at 14, didn't it? So the original story's got a lot to do.
She was actually 7. She was actually 7 in the original Grimm's fairy tale.
Well, exactly. So we could go into it.
That to be. I mean, all of these stories, Nikki, are invented, aren't they? And as we look at them, you know, there's Snow White, and she's obviously in a state. And she needs some medicine or something to save her. And you know, I mean, are you going to introduce conversations about that? You know, that's a little bit much for children, you know, to talk about the brutal realities of what happens if, you know, you're in a state like that. I mean, some of these things you just want to be in a kind of romantic fuzz when you're watching them, don't you?
It's not education, it's escapism. It's a form of entertainment.
I think it's really important to say that lots of children, obviously Emiliana says that it was fine for her, it was fine for her daughter, but lots of children do copy what they see. They don't have it explained to them. And it's not about Disney having responsibility. It's about us as a society deciding, are we sending collectively out the right messages to our children? 1 in 20 children are sexually abused, according to the NSPCC. And it's really important that we get them to understand that being kissed by someone else, being kissed by someone if they were asleep would not be okay.
Okay.
I'm Snow White or Disney. It's not because of Snow White or Disney that people are becoming sexually harassed, abused, or quite the opposite, not understanding boundaries. I work with those people, and the reason people don't understand boundaries and cross boundaries and don't understand consent is very, very complex. It's nothing to do with the Disney film.
Okay. We have to leave the conversation there, and the reason why is because we have our government minister standing by. But my goodness, that got pretty heated towards the end. Very, very important issues. But whether it is Disney's responsibility to deal with them, we'll leave you to decide. Thanks very much indeed.